Hello coloring friends, welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to go over how I use Neocolor IIs and the paper, the different books and the different paper that I find they work best on. And then we'll just I'll do a demonstration and kind of go over with you step by step how I use Neocolor IIs for backgrounds. Now, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you will know that I love these Neocolor IIs. I have been using them probably for about 5 years now for various coloring books, but there are specific coloring books that I think they work best in and that you will probably have the most success with using them because it does depend on the paper. So right here, I have my set of 84, and I think that is, that's the biggest set. However, they do sell open stock, additional colors on various art supply websites like Jerry's Artorama. That's where I've gotten mine, and I think Blick Art. Let me get my color swatch chart here for you. All right, so I have my Neocolor swatch chart here. This is just a chart that I downloaded from coloringpagesbliss.com. Jennifer Stay made this swatch chart, I think years ago. Anyway, these are the swatch charts that I use for all of my mediums, pencils, and whatnot. And I like to keep my swatch charts in this plastic sleeve in a 3-ring binder. So this chart is a 2-page chart here, and I have all of the 84 set plus some open stock as well as some discontinued colors that I got years ago that have since been discontinued. Yeah, so I have some open stock colors that I got on various art supply websites like Blick Art or Jerry's Artorama, just to supplement my set of 84 because I want all the colors. So anyway, let's talk about paper. Okay, so as many of you know, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you will know that I almost always use Neocolor IIs in the background of my Hannah Carlson pages. And that is because the paper quality in these books is really good. It's a nice, thick, smooth surface paper. So when you apply the Neo 2s, they're going to kind of stay on the surface of the paper for a little bit longer to really allow for the blending with your water brush or your watercolor brush. And it doesn't immediately soak into the paper like the Create Space paper books and some of those other books, which I will show in just a minute. In any of Hannah Carlson books, you're going to be fine with using Neocolor IIs as a background, or even if you want to base something. It's really good. Another series of books or artist books that work well with those is Maria Trollet books. She has very similar paper to Hannah Carlson books in that it's a thicker, smoother surface paper. So you're not going to have that it's not going to suck up the color immediately. Okay. Now books like by Molly Harrison or Yana Prosperina, any of these Amazon Create Space books, you're going to struggle with using your Neo 2s. Now, this is all just my opinion as a person who likes to color. I am not a professional artist or anything. I'm just telling you all my opinion and what I've found throughout my years of coloring. So I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, so because the paper in these books, it's really, I guess you would call it thirsty paper, where it just really soaks up any water mediums. Well, first of all, it doesn't take water mediums very well anyway. And coupling that with the fact that it just soaks it up immediately, you're not going to be able to work those colors and blend them around before it just sits there and soaks into the paper, if that makes sense. So for these type of books, I like to use marker, like alcohol marker for background. Distress inks work really well. Also, like on this page, I used gelatos and applied with like a stencil brush. So, there are lots of other options for backgrounds for these type of books. Also, books that I found that did not do as well with Neocolor IIs are like Kirby Roseanne's and the mythographic books. I don't know, you think it's got good quality paper in it. It feels the same as like Hannah Carlson or Maria Trolle. But for some reason, this paper just really absorbs the Neocolor IIs, and I have a really hard time with getting them to blend very well. So I find for Kirby Roseanne's books that like watercolor seems to work really well, or distress inks. Now, yeah. The mythographic, I almost took the mythographic book off. For some reason, I struggled with using Neo 2s in the background for in these books as well. And there again, it just, for some reason, just immediately absorbs into the paper, and you can't really blend them out very well. So for me, I think just mostly the Maria Trolle and the Hannah Carlson books are what works best for Neocolor IIs, especially if you're doing backgrounds in them. So I want to go ahead and move on to demonstrating how I like to apply Neocolor IIs and how I like to blend them and what I like to use to blend them. So let's start with doing a page out of Seasons. All right, so let's pick out a page here. I have this page already picked out and ready to go. I just wanted to cover up this side so it's not so distracting. But one thing that I really like to do is if I'm not really sure what colors to use or how I want the background to look, I look to Pinterest or some other websites to get some ideas, some inspiration. So like here I have on my iPad, I found this picture that the artist or the colorist had done kind of a sky background with some like loose clouds or hints of clouds. And I thought that that would look really nice for this background here with these kitties. Now, also what you can do with your Neocolor IIs is kind of make a ground too. So if you have an image like this where it's clear that they're sitting on the ground, You can just put in some brown here, and then once that dries, you can go in with your pencils and do some shading underneath the image, like I will probably do with these kitties. You can see on this picture here that that's what they had done here down below. And it just kind of gives that more realistic look to the page. So I have picked out some colors that I thought would look great and kind of similar to the reference photo there. So I picked out blue, Prussian blue, white for the cloud areas, a light cobalt blue, and sky blue. And this is kind of a little bit more of a periwinkle blue color. And so one thing I like to do is grab a scratch piece of paper to put underneath. That way, especially because most of my backgrounds, I like to go all the way to the edge, and this will kind of catch anything that goes over the edge. So let's see, let's bring the reference photo out. So you can see here that they kind of have it a little bit more dark and going light as you go down the page. So I'm going to do something similar to that. However, I'm not going to put this white and gray around the image. I'll just go ahead and bring light blue all the way down to the bottom here. And then I'll decide where I'm going to have the ground start, probably about right in here somewhere. And then we'll do that with some brown colors. All right, so I'm starting with Prussian blue, which is the darkest blue. And I'm just going to, let's see, now I like to color straight onto the page. And I have a pretty heavy hand, and so I like to lay down a lot of pigment onto the page. If you don't lay down a lot of pigment, it will vary the look. So it depends on how much you lay down, the pressure that you use with your Neocolor II. And so I'll lighten it up in some areas where there's going to be the clouds, and I'll leave those areas blank and then come in with my lighter colors. Okay, so next I'm going to go in with my blue, and which is the next lightest color. So I'm working from dark to light, which is typically how I apply the Neo 2s. I mean, there are exceptions depending on the look that I'm trying to achieve, but we're going to go straight to the next darkest blue for this sky background, and just kind of going around where I put that Prussian blue. And I like to overlap the colors. I think it makes for a better blend in that transition area. on to the next lightest color, which is sky blue. So I'm leaving a lot of areas here, well, a couple areas where I'm going to put in some clouds. So I'm running out of room, so it's okay if you jump straight to a lighter color. Okay, and a lot of the time, now if I can't get into some really small areas with these big chunky Neo 2s, what I will do is when it comes time to activate my colors with the water brush, I will pull pigment from the Neo 2 and apply it to the paper, just straight that way. Okay, so now that I've got most of the Neocolor laid down on the paper, I'm going to move on to doing the ground color here. And I just went ahead and pulled two different browns, my Van Dyke brown and my cinnamon. I'm going to start in, let's see, I'm going to use the Van Dyke brown here. Kind of my darkest color I want closer to the image. Okay, and I like to go in, like I mentioned before, with pencil work and kind of fine tune that a little bit once the Neo 2's dry. Okay, and then here I'm going in with cinnamon, which is a little bit lighter brown. And just applying that right there. And then bringing that out to the edge of the page here. that just kind of makes it so, you know, it's got a little bit more interest rather than just one brown color. Okay. So next we'll go ahead and activate the colors. So for activating, I like to use a couple different brushes. So when I've got big areas of background here, like this page, I want to use my size 10, or, you know, you can use a size 8, whatever you prefer. But for me, I find that the size 10 round watercolor brush works perfect. This is just a cheap one that I picked up at my local Hobby Lobby. It's the Hobby Lobby Master's Touch brand. I think it was like $8 or something, but it definitely comes in handy. And I like to use the watercolor brush for the bigger areas in the background. It covers a lot more area quicker, and it just has a nice, it gives like a nice watercolor look to the page. Then when it comes to getting in around all tight little spaces, you could use a smaller watercolor brush. I've done that before, but I find that I like to use a water brush for little tight spaces because I can control the amount of water, and we'll talk about that too here in a minute. But I can control the amount of water that I use a little bit better with one of these, and getting into those tight spaces is just much easier with the smaller brush for obvious reasons. So, and then I either use a paper towel or like an old rag and my cup of water here. So we'll start in, and I'm going to go ahead and get my brush completely wet and get off any excess water onto my rag. Now, as far as the amount of water, I try to use the least amount of water as possible, and yet have enough water, though, that you can move the color around. If you don't have enough water, you're not going to be able to move the color around very well. And too much water is you're either gonna soak through to the other side, or it's just not gonna look as nice. So there is kind of a happy medium with the amount of watercolor, and I try to use as little as possible, and still have the color move around, if that makes sense. So I'm going to tap the excess water off onto my rag, and then I like to start working in the upper left-hand corner and then work down to the page. That way I'm not dragging my hand, since I'm right-handed. I'm not dragging it through the wet color. So let's go ahead and start, and I like to work in circular motions and just maintaining the color placement where you laid down that color. So I'm not gonna like just go all over, because then it's gonna mix up, especially if I've got certain areas like this page where I've got my light colors and my dark colors. You want to keep those colors where they are. So I just work in circular motions, and I'll kind of, now I can see here the brush is starting to get kind of dry because the color is, it's kind of looking pasty. So I'm going to dab a little bit of water back on my brush. If I get too much, I'll dab it on the rag to take off some of the excess water. Now, as you can see how a little bit more water makes the color move around a little bit more there. So we'll just continue working, and I'm going to go ahead and activate all of the dark colors that I put in here. Okay, and I'm working right off to the edge of the paper. I mean, I have seen people where they taped it off, and yes, absolutely, you can do that too. But for me, I don't know if I'm just lazy. I always just bring it to the edge of the paper, like 90% of the time anyway. So, okay. And I'm going to go ahead and activate these little areas of the dark blue and kind of just keep them where they are right now. Okay. Get some more water. Working in circular motions, circular or oval. It just helps dissolve that color and get that color blended in a little better there. Okay, so now I'm going to clean off my brush because I'm going to move to a lighter, going into the lighter areas there. And I don't want to transfer that dark Prussian blue into my lighter areas. So coming back in and working it into that Prussian blue and then kind of dragging it out and working it in and dragging it out. And that helps kind of give a nice gradient in that transition area. Okay, just back and forth. Okay, we'll go ahead, get some more water. Okay, clean off my brush because I'm going to start working into these areas now. Dab off excess water and let's go ahead and work into these lighter areas here. Sometimes it helps for me to turn the book a little bit so I have the right angle. Okay, now I'm just trying to stay in that transition area here. I'm going to work around this area of Prussian blue here. Okay, I'm going to clean off my brush again, dab off excess water. Now let's go right into this light area and we're going to drag it, go back and forth into, you know, barely into your darker and come back. Okay, I'm going to wash off my brush and do this area now. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and rinse off my brush again. We're going to start working in this area. Going into that darker blue and working back and forth. Okay, I'm going to wash off my brush and get this light area here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and continue and kind of fast forward with the rest of the page until we get down to the ground area here. Okay, so I worked on that a little bit. Now, one thing that you can also do is you can come back in and do a little bit more blending with your paintbrush. If you don't like how it looks, because you can kind of reactivate them a little bit and remove any kind of maybe harsh lines that you have, or if you just want to get like a better blend, you can always go back in with your damp brush and tweak it a little bit. You just want to make sure that you do not oversaturate the page. Okay, so next, because I'm getting into some of these tighter areas, I'm going to break out my water brush. Make sure I have enough. Yep, there's some water in there. And then just get the water going. And yeah, and then just work in small circular motions. And anywhere that you don't have enough pigment, just grab your Neo 2 and pull pigment straight off of it here and apply it to the page. It's that easy. Okay, and then circular motions, and you can kind of drag the color around a little bit. If you have enough color on your brush, you know, you can work with it and just drag it to where you need it. I just love Neo 2s. They are, I mean, if you're working in Hannah Carlson books, or, you know, the books that have the better quality paper, then you're going to get pretty nice results, and it's pretty simple. Okay, so now we're down to the bottom area, and I'm going to just kind of work my brush back and forth because this is kind of ground area. I'm going to do circular motions, but I'm going to try to kind of keep the color flowing horizontally, if that makes sense. So I'll just work back and forth this way. Now down here at around the kitty, the bottom of the kitties where that shading is, I just want to keep that as dark as possible, so I don't really want to move that color around too much. Just activate it and blend it. Okay, now I'm going to clean off my brush and work this transition area down here, just lightly back and forth, kind of going back into the brown and into the blue there. Okay. And you definitely don't want to overwork the paper either, because it'll get oversaturated and bleed through. So try not to work too much in an area. If an area needs to be worked some more, let the Neo 2 dry and then come back in and work it some more. Okay, and so now that it's done and it has dried, I could go back in with some pencil work, which I probably will for this image, and add in some more shading with pencil underneath the kitties here. But other than that, I think it looks good, and I'm going to leave it how it is. If you feel like it needs more color in some areas, what I like to do is just pull straight from the Neo 2 crayon and add it to those little areas. And you can use either brush, depending on if it's the big areas or the smaller brush for the smaller areas. So I think it's fine as it is for now. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up for this video. I hope that maybe you learned a couple things, and maybe it helped you out a little bit. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.